Hi, my name is Jenna Burt-Weeks, and I am here today to discuss with you the involvement of the commercial fishing industry in the management of the Magnuson-Stevens Fishery and Conservation Act. The two questions that I would like to address today are the first being, does the commercial fishing industry have too much or too little authority to set the management policy under the Magnuson-Stevens Act? And the second being, has the involvement of the commercial fishing industry delayed or hindered the MSA in achieving the goals it sets out? First, I would like to address the authority that the commercial fishing industry does have under the MSA. The first piece being that through the regional management councils that the secretary puts together by appointing members, the commercial fishing industry becomes part of this regional council. The Magnuson-Stevens Act, in it requires that those voting members appointed by the secretary be individuals who have some sort of relationship, interest, economic or otherwise, in the fishery that they're put there to manage. And because of that, the commercial fishing industry members tend to have the most experience in this industry, and so certainly they're somebody that the secretary looks to appoint to these councils. These councils are put together to create the management plan recommendations that the secretary then uses to create the final management plan that puts forth regulations that control the fishery. So the commercial fishing industry definitely has a voice in the management mechanisms used by being part of these councils. The second authority that the commercial fishing industry has is somewhat an authority. It's their ability to challenge agency decisions once they become regulations, and their ability to challenge these in court based on whether the decision was made using the best science available, whether the regulation is constitutional, and whether the agency's decision was arbitrary and capricious. There are three cases that I think best illustrate the commercial fishing industry asserting their authority and what the courts have chosen to do when this does happen. The first being the state of Maine v. Krebs. This was the state of Maine challenged the regulations set forth by the secretary. There was a council, a New England regional council in place at the time. They did not have time to put together a management plan recommendation by the March 1st deadline that they had been given. And so the secretary, under the Magnuson-Stevens Act, stepped forward and put together a plan without the recommendations. The state of Maine challenged the recommendation, or rather the regulations that the secretary set forth, claiming that the best available science was possibly used but not interpreted correctly. The interesting fact in this case is that it does not appear that the court gave the agency deference in their decision, as they tend to do with agency decisions. The state of Maine was able to cast enough doubt that the court remanded the case for further reconsideration. And the court did say that the regulation was going to be allowed to go through until this information that the secretary used could be reevaluated, because of the fact that the fishing season was imminently upon them and there needed to be some regulation. So the secretary won a bit in this case, and the state of Maine won a bit. The commercial fishing industry certainly was the push behind the state of Maine. The second and third cases, the David Corporation and the Alliance Against IFQs, were both the commercial fishing industry directly challenging decisions made by the agency. In both of these cases, the commercial fishing industry was able to show that there was going to be a detriment to some individuals in the industry and a benefit to others, and the courts took that into consideration. They also took into consideration that in both cases the councils had suggested and recommended these regulations go into place, and in the end gave the agency deference over their decision. And so the regulations were not changed in either of these cases. So it would appear that even with the commercial fishing industry asserting their authority with the ability to challenge these decisions, in 2 times out of 3, the agency is given deference over their decision and the regulation is put in place. And so this authority of being able to challenge is not actually that powerful. And so the bigger authority is that of individuals from the commercial fishing industry sitting on regional councils and helping to promulgate rules and management plans from that aspect. So moving to the second question on whether or not the commercial fishing industry has delayed or hindered the effectiveness of the Magnuson-Stevens Act's goals. The overlying goal of the Act is to provide for the conservation and management of fisheries and to prevent against overfishing. This also has an underlying goal of while doing this, maintaining the economic viability of the fishery. So within the MSA's goals, there's certainly this underlying issue that the commercial fishing industry is involved in and benefits from and is directly affected by the economic viability of the fishery. The Pacific Marine Conservation Council v. Evans is a very interesting case in that it's actually the Pacific Regional Council challenging a decision by the Secretary, claiming that it was not strictly following the MSA, and therefore the Secretary was not furthering the effectiveness of the MSA. The court found for the Regional Council and found that, in fact, the Secretary was not closely following the MSA rules when it came to bycatch reduction methods. And in that case, the commercial fishing industry was furthering the goals of the MSA rather or more so than the Secretary himself. So an interesting case to look at. Again, going back to some of the other cases, the Alliance case, the industry was able to show that there was going to be a major detriment to individuals involved in the fishery, and still the court found that the regulations were correct. And so, again, the effectiveness of the MSA was furthered by that case and not hindered. It possibly slowed the implementation of the regulations slightly, but not substantially enough to say that it affected the goals of the MSA. There was a very interesting report by the Pew Charitable Trust and Ocean Conservancy sort of reiterating the fact that the commercial fishing industry has helped to further the goals of the MSA through having more practical ways of managing the fishery and conserving the fishery when individuals who are involved in the actual fishing of the fishery that's being managed, certainly their know-how and experience on the water helps to create more practical ways of assigning quotas and creating bycatch reduction technology and methods, and knowing sort of where the loopholes may be and how to close them. The other point that the report made as well was that when there are commercial fishermen on these councils recommending these management practices, this can certainly help gain support among other fishermen in the industry. and therefore, instead of having some pushback that may otherwise happen if it was, a bunch of scientists on the board, the management council, rather than those who are directly economically, financially affected by the regulations promulgated, then it helps gain the support. Another point that the report made was that the commercial fishing industry is who is directly affected, clearly, by the MSA and the regulations that come out of the policies. It is within their best interest to have a sustainable, well-managed, conserved fishery. They're the ones that benefit from having the fish available. They are the ones that benefit from having the quotas that then become a commodity that they can trade, sell, lease, share among each other, and in themselves create value. And when the fishery is not in place, and when the species is depleted enough, they're not worth anything. And the commercial fishing industry is very aware of this and very aware of the benefits that this act has brought them. And so they've seen cooperation with the commercial fishing industry. There are certainly plenty of cases brought challenging regulations put forth under the MSA, but these tend to not affect the goals of the act to a great extent. And it is an ever-changing industry. It's affected by many variables that are uncontrollable, and it has to sort of be elastic. And having those challenges in court allows for the elasticity and sort of gives the fishery and the industry more of a voice, whereas they otherwise may feel as though they're getting lost, and so may not cooperate to such an extent. Were these areas of participation not available, and areas of seen authority not available? So I really feel that the commercial fishing industry and the government agencies have developed this balance that promotes the goals of conservation and management and preventing overfishing that are set forth in the Magnuson-Stevens Act. And they, at the same time, they've figured out a way to keep the fisheries that are burdened by these regulations economically viable. And I think having the commercial fishing industry having a voice and some sort of authority in the policy making and in the management plan of these fisheries is the reason that the fisheries have been able to remain economically viable. There are things that the commercial industry brings to the table that would not have been thought of by a bunch of policymakers sitting around not having experience on the water. And so with that being said, I don't think that the commercial fishing industry has too much or too little authority. I think the authority that the commercial fishing industry has is just the right amount, because of this balance that the government agencies and the industry has been able to create. I also do, as I said, feel as though the commercial fishing industry has certainly not hindered or delayed the goals of the MSA in any substantial way. Their involvement in many cases has helped to further these goals and has been positive to both the fisheries and the policies. So I thank you for taking your time to listen to me, and these are the references that I used in coming to my conclusion, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thank you.